really thought I was done with people pleasing. I'd put in the work, built stronger boundaries, and told myself never again. But here's the thing, when you believe you're past something, sometimes that's exactly when it can sneak back in. For me, it showed up big time when I moved back home to Minnesota, a place where indirect communication is the norm and where directness, especially from women, doesn't always land well. It also flared up as I built my second business, trying to prove I could really help people, undercharging for my services, still over delivering to keep everyone happy, and trying to fit in entrepreneurial circles because I was making it. And just like that, I found myself right back in perfectionism, burnout, and that lonely place where it feels like nobody, except maybe a handful of close friends, really gets it. Even my body started waving red flags: poor sleep, digestive issues, tension in my hips and shoulders. So today, I want to take you inside that experience, not just to share my story, but to help you recognize where people pleasing and perfectionism might still be hiding in your own life, how they pull us off track, and how to start finding your way out. Be sure to listen.
Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I cannot believe I'm having this conversation. I'm not going to lie. My 35-year-old part of me who thought she'd left people-pleasing behind has been a little disappointed that people-pleasing has resurfaced in me, so there's that. But here we are, and I share this because I suspect I'm not alone. So maybe like me, you've done the work, you've done the therapy, you've read lots of Brene Brown, you've worked on your boundaries, you even with like letting go of people pleasing, maybe you even stopped worrying what people thought as much and learned how to deal with when people are mad at you. Or if you're like, no, Jen, I'm still stuck in people pleasing, then this episode will still be helpful because we're going to talk about how to get out of it and how it is not helpful and actually hurtful. But maybe if you've done the work and you're like, oh, I don't people please anymore. And now you're like, oh, shoot, I think I'm doing it again. I wanted to create a space for that because it can happen. And for those of you who are still people pleasing and maybe haven't figured out how to get out of it yet, we'll talk about that. But also you can see how to keep your eye on the ball or on the prize, whatever, so that people pleasing doesn't resurface in your life like it did for me. So I felt like I'd overcome my people pleasing, was doing a really good job. I started setting boundaries in my 20s when I first learned what they were. In my 30s, I read Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection, and everything else she had out at the time, and really did some good work with it. And with my therapy clients, I tend to be really good with boundaries most of the time. And with my family and close friends, I tend to be quite good at boundaries. Where I didn't imagine this would sneak back in was when I started my second business in 2020. And when you are doing an online business, so you're a digital entrepreneur, there is a lot of putting yourself out there, like a lot. And probably you know that to some degree, even just watching me, if you're not an entrepreneur yourself, between my YouTube channel, my podcast, it used to be for a while, I think I did TikTok for a while, Instagram for a while, Facebook all along in there, although I don't do Facebook now, and now more like LinkedIn and YouTube. But there's a lot of putting yourself out there. And there's a lot of making offers to people and saying like, hey, here's how I can help you. Do you want to work with me? And a lot of dealing with people being like, oh, no, now's not the time, or no, I don't really care for you. I mean, they don't say it quite like that. There's different ways, but if you're an entrepreneur, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of that external feedback that we end up getting that we want because it helps us fine tune what we're doing. So that external feedback, those what people might call mistakes, is really just things that are our guideposts that help us. And sometimes, especially when we're selling a service, or even like now I've got my journal book experience you can grab, which is actually a tangible product. There's this desire to have people find what you do valuable. There's a desire to have people be willing to pay for it because, I mean, that's when you're selling something, you need that, but then feel like it's worth it. And so, what I fell into, and I've seen other entrepreneurs do this as well, and certainly it's not exclusive to entrepreneurs, is this newfound effort at people pleasing. But it's a little sneakier the second time around because it doesn't quite look as blatant as the people pleasing looked when I was doing it in my relationships. But it's a lot more hustling kind of behavior that I got into, and a lot more trying to almost prove that, "Hey, I can help you." And the reality is I know I can help you. I've been in this field for 25 years, and I kinda to my own horn, I'm really good at what I do, and at the same time, because people in the digital space don't know us, everyone's starting from ground zero. And there's a need to help people see how you could help them if they're ready for that work. And in my brain somewhere, that turned that switch of people pleasing back on so that I was delivering what people wanted and saying what they wanted to hear instead of maybe what we needed to hear. Although I think I've been pretty good at saying some of what we need to hear also. Uh, and then when people do get into my program, I'm for sure over delivering, but maybe even to the point where it's no longer an even energy exchange, that I'm way giving a lot. And that's not great either because then we can end up resentful or just drained. And so that's how it snuck up on me. Another layer of this was I moved back home from Colorado to Minnesota, where I'm from. And I love Minnesota. Minnesotans are my people. And after having lived in Colorado around people from all over the country, because I lived in Colorado Springs, which was not a particular fit for me personally, but there's people from all over the country there because of the military installations. And so I met people from all around the country, and that is where I did most of my next layer of boundary work. So I got used to being really direct. And Minnesotans are very nice and somewhat indirect communicators. And if you have lived in Minnesota and you're not a Minnesotan, you could be like, somewhat, Jen. That's straight indirect, like passive, right? But again, there's my indirect communication, but can be pretty indirect communicators. And certainly it's not everyone here, but a lot are, so that direct communication, especially from a woman, doesn't really land well all the time, or you end up getting into a lot of conflict. And that was conflict I had gotten used to getting into, so it didn't bother me anymore when I was in Colorado. But when I was back in Minnesota around all like my people, it threw me for a loop, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm noticing there's this extra layer of work to do." And there's one more way this showed up. If you've ever been in an online program and there's like small group coaching, and maybe you're trying to get a hot seat, or you're all trying to work this program, which for me, I was in that. I was in a mentorship program for a smaller program. So it was very expensive. And there was this desire to do it right and to meet my goals and go as big as the creator wanted us to. And the creator of the program wanted us to. And almost this weird dynamic of wanting to please him, which I don't get because I don't even know if the guy knows my name anymore. Probably not. Even, I mean, I was one of a couple, few hundred people in his supposedly small mentorship. But like, I don't know, maybe he might recognize me. I'm not sure. But it's amazing that a part of me was like, please accept me. Please say I'm doing a good job, which is a little wild because I thought I was past all that. And so I left that ecosystem of his programs and his work back in December. And you've heard me talk about it. I created a lot of debt being in that program. And some of that certainly was from my people pleasing, which I'm fully responsible for and not proud of, but it's there. I've radically accepted I've done that. And I didn't really notice that people pleasing was a layer of it and that perfection was another layer. I was noticing this summer that I was teetering on the edge of burnout, maybe as early as April or May of 2025. Noticing I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of teetering on the edge of burnout. I need to slow down. And I kind of slowed down a little bit, but I wasn't addressing the underlying issues that had resurfaced, which was perfectionism was starting to come back. Like, I have to get these videos perfect or no one's going to watch them. I have to make sure my offer is so awesome that no one could refuse it, which is insane. I only want to work with people who actually want to work with me and do the type of work that I can help you do. I don't want just anyone to like my offers that I put out there. So at any rate, I had gotten into that cycle. And first I noticed it because I was burned out. And yes, I was teetering on the edge of burnout in April or May. And then by the time I got to June, I was pretty sure I was heading into burnout. And so I was trying to slow down more and not doing a super good job. And then in August, I was up at the cabin. Our family cabin is on a lake, beautiful lake. It's a nice small lake from Minnesota. So there's not a lot of boat traffic. I mean, there's some, but not a ton. And it's just gorgeous up there. We've got a loon family on the lake, a bald eagle on the lake. And so you see them with all the herring and the other birds. It's so amazing. It's gorgeous. And what was I doing? Almost the whole time I was up there, the 2 times I went up this summer, I was on my computer and trying to get everything done so that the people in my program would be happy, trying to get all my content done so that all of you who take it in would get what you need. And I didn't even know I was doing it. But that people pleasing came back. And I hit a wall one day. I actually, when I was sitting up at the cabin on Saturday night, the night after I'd been up there just over a week, and I was looking out at the lake and I'm like, oh my God, look what I missed out on. I missed out on the beauty of this place. I was so in my head about everything I had to do. I missed the joy that's here. I missed playing up here and having fun. And I was like, okay, yeah, we have to do things different. And I had another couple weeks where I still was working 6 days a week and putting in about 7 to 9 hours a day, mostly 7, mostly 9, not 7. And then I hit a wall. I woke up one morning on a Thursday, probably I think the Thursday after I got back from the cabin, and I couldn't do anything. I could not get myself to be on my computer. I just was done. It was like, okay, yeah, I've hit the wall. And it was because I had slipped back into that cycle of people pleasing. In the meantime, there were other signs, but I wasn't seeing it. I, in June, started to have some pain at, if you know anatomy, it's my medial ischial tuberosity where the hamstring attaches. If you don't know anatomy, basically where your hamstring attaches to your pelvis, like on the inside. And it was starting to hurt and bother me. And of course, I panicked because I had a friend who had a major hamstring detachment situation and major surgery and all that. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I freaked out, but I didn't connect the dots that this was my body telling me to slow down. And then after that week I was at the cabin, I had horrible neck pain. Like my neck was so stiff, I could hardly turn my head. And as a yoga teacher, someone who practices yoga and does a lot of exercise, I normally have pretty awesome range of motion. And I was so limited. By then my sleep was horrible. I mean, some because I was in a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of pain. I would say like a 5 or 6 out of 10, so maybe not a lot. They did get to a point there where I was like at a 10 out of 10 one day, and I was just like, "Yeah, your body's done, Jen. It's done. It's not doing this anymore." And so I've been peeling back the layers and slowing down, First, just thinking it was only burnout. I'm like, okay, you're working too hard. You just have to stop working so hard. But what I didn't ask back then, and I probably even talked about my burnout at that point. I think I did an episode on it. What I didn't know back then until I slowed down enough to peel back the layers and sit with it is the reason I'd got back into that cycle of hustling and pushing and then eventually burnout was because I had returned to people pleasing. And if you're noticing stuff in your body, like going on, if you're noticing your mind gets stuck, it's even harder to focus than it used to be. I mean, part one, I want to say, if you're perimenopausal like me, like I thought it was just perimenopause, to be honest. I didn't realize that some of this was my own doing because I'd slipped into some old patterns. But it's important to pay attention when our body gives us messages. And yes, sometimes it truly is something else. Sometimes it truly is that you were a runner and over time, the synovial fluid, the gushy stuff in your knee joint that helps your knee work well, has worn down some. So now you have some knee pain. And that might solely be because you ran 10 miles a day for 30 years and now your body's going, ooh, it could truly be that. But it could also be that your body isn't able to rejuvenate because when we're in burnout, when we're people pleasing, when we're being perfectionistic, we are not in a regulated state of our nervous system. We are often in our fight or flight response. And then probably vacillating down to our shutdown response because we're so tired from doing that. And we go back and forth, not really getting enough time in that ventral vagal response, the place where it's safe enough to connect, digest, and rest and recover. That state, that ventral vagal state is where we are supposed to be most of the time. So our bodies can rejuvenate themselves. So we can rest and recover. But when we're in that cycle of people pleasing and perfectionism, it's hard to relax. We're in this like go, go, go kind of tizzy. And then that starts to wear on our body. Often for me, my body is one of the first ways it will show up. I'll usually get neck pain. This time it was my hamstring, as well as I wasn't sleeping as well, but I just thought the not sleeping as well was perimenopause. But something interesting happened. Over the last, let's see, so Labor Day weekend, I was up at the cabin with my family and just did fun stuff. I couldn't work that day. And I was like, okay, I'm not working on Saturdays anymore. I'm working 5 days a week, and what I get done, I get done. If I need to clean up some stuff for an hour or two on a Saturday, that's fine. But I get to have a life. This isn't sustainable. And all of a sudden, I started sleeping better. And I just realized it this week. I was like, well, of course you're sleeping better, Jen. You're not only working. Our bodies were not made to sit at a computer and work nonstop. Our bodies were made to move. And we're not just here to be work engines. We're not machines. We're humans. We're here to embrace our human experience fully, and that includes having fun, engaging with joy and beauty around us. And don't get me wrong, it's not lost on me that, especially if you're in the States, but even anywhere in the world, there is some heavy stuff going on. And yes, I'm not suggesting that we don't also acknowledge that and do our part, whatever that is, to speak out for justice and peace, whatever it is that's important to you. And I do those things. That was part of the overworking, and I'm still doing those things. But now it doesn't feel like I'm trying to fit it in because I've created more space. I actually have a weekend again. And it might mean that I'm putting out less content. And right now it means that I'm taking a break from offering my program until I can streamline what I'm doing, which is my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn posts, and my podcast, as well as some emails. I like stripped my second business down to the bare minimum so that I can keep working with my awesome VA because I really know that I want her to always be a part of my team. And so I can streamline it all and make this a sustainable business. in the program I was in, they're like, yeah, you'll be able to build it with only 4 to 6 hours a day eventually. But first, you're going to probably be working, 6 or 7 days a week for a few years. It's been 5.5 and I'm done. Like, I can't do it. So if you're an entrepreneur, yes, eventually, maybe we do want our business to be that we're not having to work as much or as hard. And we have to build up to that. But that doesn't mean only working for the better, like a half a decade. Because our bodies can't do that. And maybe if you're younger, maybe if you're listening to this, you're like 25 or 30, you're like, I can do that. Great. I think I'll be sad that you will miss out on some of the fun of the age that you're at. That not that your 50s aren't fun. I'm already having fun in my 50s now that I've allowed myself to stop working so much. But there's so much more to life than just work. We have so much more value than just the work we do. And so burnout and our body not functioning as well, our sleep being poor. Oh, another thing I forgot to say is my digestion. Oh my gosh, my digestion was horrible. And if you don't like to hear talk about poop, you can close your ears for about 30 seconds. But a lot of women over 40 really struggle with constipation. And I have my thoughts about that, but I really think a lot of it is stress. And so I drink enormous amounts of water, and I've always kind of struggled with that. But this was next level. It was just like, oh my gosh, to the point where I had to get bigger pants because I wasn't going enough. So anyway, you can come back if you plugged your ears. But that's a sign when our digestion is unhealthy, that's a sign that something isn't working. In fact, in Ayurveda, which is a sister science of yoga, I look at it as homeopathy in India before modern medicine, focuses on healthy digestion because when you heal your digestion in Ayurveda, you heal everything else. They really understood the developers of Ayurveda sounds like a wild thing to say because I don't know that they would use the word developer, but the people who figured out Ayurveda way back when, they knew that our gut was important. They didn't have to see the science on the gut-brain axis. They didn't have to see that we have a second brain in our gut to know that digestion, healing digestion was an important part of health. So if you're having those signs, if you're noticing poor digestion, whether that's constipation or diarrhea or whatever, if you have IBS, if you're noticing poor sleep, I was having wild dreams. I was waking up in the middle of the night, struggling to go back to bed. I noticed myself getting stuck more. My ADHD was worse. And yes, some of those things can be worse with perimenopause, but I'm doing a lot to help my perimenopause be awesome. And I'm almost at the end of it, knock on wood. And it was getting worse. So that didn't make any sense. So when you start to have those things, it's time to slow down. When you're feeling burned out, it's time to slow down. But slowing down alone isn't the only thing. It's figuring out how did you get there in the first place? And for me, it was because I fell back into people pleasing and some perfectionism. Not enough perfectionism to keep me from putting things out there, but definitely enough perfectionism to make things take longer. And I know with ADHD, you go down those perfectionistic rabbit holes sometimes too. It's just our brains can just be like zeroed in on something, especially if it's interesting to us, to the point where we'll spend hours and hours on a font choice or something like that. Anyway, so what do we do? Once you figure out that you are people pleasing, maybe again, maybe still, and maybe have fallen back into perfectionism, you need to make a choice that you don't want to do this anymore. And part of that is understanding the toll it takes on you to continue people pleasing and to continue with the perfectionism. And here's one of those things. When we are people pleasing, I want you to think about this. When you're people pleasing, what kind of people do you attract into your life? Is it givers? Is it people who want a healthy balance in their relationship with you? Usually not. Usually it's people who tend to take more, or at least in their relationship with you will take more. And they'll take everything till you say stop. And to be clear, in case anyone in my program is listening to this, I'm not talking about y'all's. I'm just talking about like people in the world in my personal life because I know a lot of the people in my program listen to this. That's not who I'm talking about, but they've been in my program way longer before this was getting stronger. But we tend to attract people who take from us, not people who want a balance between give and take. And whether that's friendships, maybe it is in your business, maybe it's at your job. That means your friendships are going to be out of balance and not feel fulfilling. In fact, they might not even be real friendships. They might just be people kind of using you for what you're giving them. And you might not realize, like, oh, they don't actually like me for me. They like what I give to them. And if you want to know more about that, you can listen to last week's episode on friendship if you're finding some of your friendships or relationships imbalanced. But that's one of the things that happens. And then we feel like we're the only one giving and no one gives back to us. And then we're tired. And eventually we get resentful. And that sucks. And so some of this over giving, this people pleasing is damaging to relationships. It's damaging to our health because we end up burned out because it's just not sustainable. And we're not building on a strong foundation. I just started reading Brene Brown's book, Strong Ground, I think is what it's called. Cannot for the life of me remember the subtitle. That's not going to be in my head. But it's all about, we're not going to build on dysfunction. So whether that's in your business or in your life, you can't build healthy systems, a healthy business, healthy friendship on dysfunction and imbalance where you're the one giving everything, or maybe you're taking everything, whatever that is. That is not a healthy foundation. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about relationships like with your children. You are going to always be giving more to your children than they give to you until you're at an age where perhaps they do need to help you. My dad is in a stage of life where we do help him more, and he helps us too with some stuff. But like we're getting into a stage where the balance is starting to shift in us helping him more and more, helping him get to appointments and just other things like that. I won't share more because privacy. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about relationships with our peers or people we want to be friends with or in our business or in our job, whatever it is. That imbalance is an unhealthy foundation. It's dysfunctional. So anything you build off of that is not going to be functional either. Eventually it will all crumble. And it may take decades, but eventually it will crumble. So those are just some of the many reasons why people pleasing is not an effective way to go. I do want to just say though, I'm not trying to call anyone out. I've also been a people pleaser. Parts of us who did this, like the part of you who's a people pleaser, did this to help you survive your childhood with ADHD. Our little girl parts figured out like, oh, okay, as long as I make everyone happy and I please everyone, then they'll be kind to me, or maybe they'll be my friend, or perhaps if it's a teacher, maybe they'll go a little easier on me when my ADHD moments do show up. And so this is valid that we get into this. No judgment that we're in it. It's just that it doesn't work anymore. It's not a long-term strategy. And now that we know this, we can choose to do something different because we're not children anymore. We're not in our parents' house without the ability to make choices for ourselves. So those are just some of the reasons why people pleasing isn't effective. So then it's like, how do we get out of it? Well, number one, I truly believe this, and this is probably something people don't talk about. Before we even get into the boundaries, we've got to get comfortable with people being upset with us or not liking us. And that can be really tricky for women with ADHD because, first of all, women are expected to be always really good at connection and really nice and to play nice and not have any conflict, to be quiet and play nice, right? There's so much of that. Rosalind Wiseman in her book Queen Bees and Wannabes talks about how actually all of that just play nice. Oh, you're such nice girls. You're playing so nice. Actually builds up into relational aggression in girls and women. So that's an interesting side note, but that playing nice there's data to support that that's what we were taught. And so then we didn't really learn how to deal with what happens when we're not playing by those rules that aren't working for us. We're not playing by the patriarchy rules that women are supposed to be passive and sweet and always kind. And listen, I believe in being kind all the time, but I also believe in being direct. And so we can be direct with kindness. We can be direct without being an asshole. We can be compassionate in our direct communication. And if you're a woman and you choose to do that, especially if you're in a culture that does not like that so much, especially where there's heavy patriarchy, people might get pissed. They might reject you. They might call you a bitch. And really, I heard recently in this program I'm in for healing the divine feminine in us that the word bitch actually means a woman in her power. So I'm like, let's be bitches, y'all, because that's awesome. But no one wants to be called a bitch in the derogatory way that they mean it, even if we redefine it. And so we've got to get comfortable with that and figure out how do you deal with your feelings when someone says that. And if you're new to that, and even if you're not, there's going to be an initial sting. I've worked through a lot of feelings and I've gotten really good at coping with people's feelings, although clearly I was avoiding some of that lately. But I'm pretty good at it. But there's always an initial sting still, like, ooh, that did not feel good. And sometimes there's even a short spiral. It's a much shorter spiral than it used to be. I I used to spiral for days, and sometimes even longer, like a week, on something someone said to me that hurt my feelings, or if I was too direct and they kind of lashed out back at me because they didn't appreciate it, I would spiral. So if you've never been direct, if you've always been people pleasing, if you've never articulated your needs and wants or done things the way that you think are important, it's going to take some getting used to and some work on how do you deal with those feelings. And that is a way bigger conversation than we can cover in this episode. I do offer one-to-one coaching, or therapists definitely do some of that work as well. So you can meet with a therapist near you. If you're interested in one-to-one coaching, you can go to my website and reach out to me that way. But that's a big conversation, is figuring out how to handle those feelings, figuring out how to handle the rejection, because it might also be triggering some deeper wounds, some parts of you who hold past rejection. It might not only be about you having been direct now and someone having been like, oh my God, and getting mean and nasty to you. So it might also trigger all the other times when someone rejected you. So that's why this is such a big thing. But before you can, I don't know if it's before, I don't know if that's a fair statement, but it seems like before you're really going to feel good about not people pleasing, you're going to have to get comfortable enough with people not liking you, people being mad at you, people being annoyed or by you or frustrated with you, and all the other things, people rejecting you. And that's okay because they're not your people. If they're rejecting you because you're speaking your truth in a kind and compassionate way, they're not your people. They're not for you. They're not for you in the sense that they're not friends for you, but they're not rooting for you either. I recently set a boundary in my program, and every single one of those women was like, essentially, to one degree or another, was like, thank you for this. This is fair, or good for you for taking care of your energy in this way. And I am so grateful I attracted those awesome women into my program. I was a little more balanced, doing less people pleasing back then because I was attracting people into my program. So I didn't feel like I had to hustle as much. And so that's really beautiful. But you will attract the people who are for you, both like you're meant to be around each other, but also they're rooting for you. Not that the people you serve have to always be rooting for you, but you kind of want that a little bit because you want to have a positive working relationship with them. It's going to be a different kind of rooting for you than your friends or your coworkers or your boss. All those are going to be, there's going to be a little bit difference, but you still want people who are for you in both those ways. Then it's figuring out how to set boundaries and how to maintain them even when people are pissed. Because a lot of times when we people please, that's what we're avoiding. We're avoiding conflict. We're avoiding pissing people off. We're avoiding the conversations, the tough conversations that come when we set boundaries. Because chances are you already know what you want, or maybe you've been people pleasing so long you don't. So maybe a in between step in there is even figuring out, what do you want now that you're not people pleasing? And maybe that's taking some time to pull back. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. It's why I'm not offering my program, except serving the people I have and working with the one-to-one coaching clients I have. Still doing my private practice. That's my other business. But I'm taking some time to really reground into what is in alignment with me right now, where I'm at this stage of my life. What's meaningful to me? How can I do this business in a way that aligns with my values, that allows me to still have time for myself? Because I like to have a lot of time for myself, and in a lot of ways with ADHD, I need it. I need it. I need that strong ground. I need my meditation practice, yoga practice, daily exercise, journaling, gratitude practice, all the things, eating nutritious foods, sleeping at least 8 hours. Although with perimenopause, it's closer to 8.5 or 9. Those things I need. So it's like, okay, how can I keep those full practices going and have a successful second business? And that's not something you think through. That's something you sit with and reflect on, and that comes to you almost from the other side if you believe in that. So that's what I'm doing now. And maybe there's a step in there that you will need to do as well around, like, what is it that you even want? What do you want? And how can you get it without sacrificing yourself constantly to people pleasing and perfectionism and no longer having fun? Then we figure out, like, how do we communicate boundaries around that? There's lots of ways to communicate a boundary without saying no. Lots and lots of them. And so you figure that out. And again, that is way deeper than we're going to go into in a podcast episode. That's more for people who work with me, but certainly you can read a book by Brené Brown, or there's a gazillion books on boundaries out there, and you can decide which ones resonate with you. Some might not feel as good when you read it. I mean, it might not feel good if you've never set boundaries before. So, like, I wouldn't say reject everything just because it doesn't feel good, but there are some that are going to feel more in alignment with the way you want to set your boundaries. But really, the tricky part is maintaining the boundary. Because here's the thing, when you set a boundary with someone who's been benefiting from you not setting the boundary, from your people pleasing, they're not going to like it. And it's not because they don't like you, though they might think that, they might equate it with that. But essentially, you're taking away something they've been getting. They've been benefiting from your people pleasing. And when you communicate a boundary, you're taking that away from them, no matter how well you set that up. So they may not like it, especially if they're not someone who's in your cheering section. So they're less mad at you, and they're more mad that the thing they want is gone. And so sometimes we can help them find another way to meet that need. Sometimes it's just not our stuff. It just depends on the situation. But understanding that it's not your job to constantly give to someone else at the expense of your own self. And finding the courage to maintain those boundaries. And again, you don't have to say it in an asshole way. You can say it. And in my head, and I need to wrap up here, but in my head, so I'm giving a talk at a women's retreat on nervous system regulation and boundaries. So one of the things that's in my head around boundaries is what a boundary actually is versus the common misconception of boundaries. So one of the things I'm going to talk about, and this retreat will have already happened by the time this episode airs, is like, a lot of people think a boundary is, you can't talk to me that way, or you can't do this. That's actually not a boundary. That's telling someone else what to do. Boundaries are all about you letting someone know what your need is, or you taking care of yourself. Boundaries are about you. So instead of like, you can't talk to me like that, boundaries are when someone starts yelling, I leave the conversation, or I don't stay in conversations when yelling starts. Or I'm noticing an imbalance in the energy exchange, and when I notice that, I choose to pull back. So there's lots of ways to set your boundary, but keeping in mind it's actually about you and your needs, not about telling someone else what they need to do. So that can also sometimes make the boundary setting go a little bit more smoothly when you remember that. Otherwise, it's just trying to control the other person, and that never goes well. And I mean, it shouldn't. It's not our job to control anyone. So there's that. All right. I think we've done a thorough unpacking. I feel like we got there. I believe you know that I've got my journal book experience out in my last episode, the one on friendship. At the end, I actually pulled it out and showed you it. I think that's still in there. I, maybe I didn't keep it in, but I'm actually going to shoot after this a little like video about what it is and what's in it. So stay tuned if I didn't end up keeping that part in there. I thought I did, but we'll see. Anyway, I put out so much content now I can't even remember what I did. So, but if you're a ADHD woman and you're tired of playing small, my journal book experience is actual tangible box that is branded. It's cardboard, but it's glossy, it's pretty, and inside of it is the journal book that you write in, and it's small because I probably didn't put enough pages in for the actual journaling part, but it's really helpful to get you to start to overcome some of the inner obstacles to being able to set boundaries or do other things so that you can stop playing small. So it would be a really nice way to start some of this work if you're not quite ready to commit to one-to-one coaching with me or going to therapy. I'm not saying this is in replacement of therapy, especially if you have a significant mental health concern. It's just if you're only trying to work on like the underlying stuff that's getting in the way of you setting boundaries, this could be a nice start to consider. But it's not just a book. It actually comes with other beautiful things like some rose water and a rose quartz and some Palo Santo with a ritual to do to help you on your path towards playing big with ADHD. So check it out. I'll put the link in the description or show notes, and be sure to like or comment on this episode if you love it, or at least subscribe or share. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, week, year, whatever it is. Take care.